I stood in the cold, quiet bank, my hands gripping the counter to keep me steady. The manager, Mr. Thompson, looked at me with pity in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Kevin," he said softly. "There's nothing left. The account was emptied 2 years ago." My heart pounded, a cold dread washing over me. "Emptied?" I whispered, my voice shaky. "That's impossible." He slid a paper across the counter, pointing to the withdrawal details. "It was taken out by your parents," he said, his tone gentle but firm. I stared at the paper, my vision blurring with tears. Betrayal hit me like a punch. My college fund, the money my father always bragged about, the safety net he promised would set me up for a brilliant future, was gone. I remembered my 8th birthday, balloons everywhere, my father hoisting me onto his shoulders. "Kevin's going to have a great life," he'd shouted to the neighbors. "His funds all set. He'll never worry about a thing." Those words had wrapped around me like a warm blanket, making me feel safe. Now, they were a lie. I stumbled out of the bank, my legs weak, my mind racing. How could they do this? I drove straight to my parents' house, anger and confusion burning in my chest. My father was in the kitchen, reading the paper like nothing was wrong. He didn't even look up when I burst in. "How could you?" I shouted, my voice trembling. "You took everything from my savings." "Why?" He finally met my eyes, his gaze cold. "Evan needed it more, Kevin," he said, like it was obvious. "He's been struggling." "Struggling?" I echoed, my voice cracking. "Evan just bought a house. I was counting on that money for my future." My father stood, his face hard. "Evan got that house because we helped him. He's had it tough, stuff you wouldn't get. You've always been the spoiled one. It's time you learned to stand on your own." His words hit like a slap, stealing my breath. Spoiled? I'd spent my whole life following their rules, working hard to make them proud. I got straight A's, never asked for much, always did what they wanted. But it was never enough. The unfairness burned in my chest, my hands shaking. "You said it was mine," I whispered. "For my future." He sighed, annoyed, setting the paper down. "Evan deserved it more. You've always had it easy, Kevin. Can't you handle one setback without making a scene?" I stood there, frozen, his words cutting deep. The father I thought I knew, the one I believed cared about me, had just shown how little I meant to him. My trust in him shattered, replaced by a cold, hard truth: they didn't care about me the way they cared about Evan. "You lied to me," I said, my voice growing steadier, sharper. "All these years, you let me think I mattered to you as much as Evan." My father turned away, staring out the window like I wasn't even there. "Grow up, Kevin. Life doesn't revolve around you." His coldness stung, but it also lit a fire in me. I wasn't their doormat anymore. I turned to leave, my eyes burning with tears, but they weren't just from sadness, they were from anger, betrayal, and a growing plan. They thought they could use me and toss me aside. They thought I'd stay quiet. They were wrong. Outside, I took a shaky breath, my mind racing. My parents had rewritten my past, taken what was mine without a thought. But I'd take control of my future. They'd learn what happens when you betray someone you never thought would fight back. I wasn't broken. I was ready. I drove to Evan's new house, my hands tied on the steering wheel. I needed to hear it from him, needed to know if he felt even a shred of guilt for taking what was mine. The sun was setting as I pulled up to his place, a shiny new home my college fund had paid for. Evan was on the patio, lounging with a few friends, a beer in his hand. Their laughter stopped when they saw me walking up. "Evan, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He raised an eyebrow, smirking. "About what now?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "Our parents used my savings to buy this house. I want to know what you think about that." Evan laughed, loud and mocking, leaning back in his chair. "You're spoiled, Kevin. Stop whining. That money wasn't even yours, It was just sitting there, wasted on you. His friends shifted awkwardly, glancing at each other, but Evan didn't care. His words hit hard, my cheeks burning with humiliation. Spoiled? I said, my voice rising. That was my future, Evan. You had no right to take it. He shrugged, taking a sip of his beer. You've always had it easy. You don't know what struggle is. I needed the house more than you needed some fancy degree. I stood there, stunned, anger boiling inside me. I'd hoped for some kind of remorse, maybe an apology, but Evan didn't care. He thought I didn't deserve what I'd been promised, thought he was entitled to it. I turned to leave, but his voice followed me, loud and gleeful. Can you believe he thinks he deserves that money? He said to his friends, laughing again. Like he's ever had to fight for anything. Their chuckles echoed behind me, each one slicing deeper. I got in my car, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel. Evan's smug face burned in my mind, his laugh, his casual cruelty. He thought he'd won, thought I'd just roll over and take it. But he'd just poured fuel on my fire. I drove off, my anger hardening into resolve. Evan and my parents thought I was weak, that I'd let this slide. They didn't know me at all. I'd spent years trying to be the perfect son, the perfect brother, hoping they'd see my worth. But they never did. Evan got the praise, the help, the excuses for his mistakes, while I got nothing but criticism. Now, I saw it clearly, they'd never cared about me the way they cared about him. I pulled over a few blocks away, my chest tight. Memories flooded back, birthdays where Evan got big gifts while I got forgotten, my good grades ignored while Evan's average ones were celebrated. Every family talk always circled back to Evan's needs, his problems, while mine were brushed off. I'd been blind, thinking it was just how families were. Now, I knew better. I wiped my eyes, my jaw clenched. Evan's words, spoiled, whining, rang in my ears, but they didn't break me. They made me stronger. I wasn't going to let him or my parents control my life anymore. They'd taken my past, my trust, my future. But I'd take it back, piece by piece. I started the car, my mind racing with what to do next. I needed proof, a plan, something to make them face what they'd done. Evan thought this was over, that I'd disappear quietly. But this was just the beginning. I'd show him, show them all, that I wasn't the weak little brother they thought I was. I was done being invisible. I was ready to fight. A few days later, I went to a family gathering at my parents' house, hoping to clear my head. But being there made everything worse. I drifted through the crowd, feeling like a ghost. My father's voice boomed across the room as he bragged to some cousins about Evan's new house, calling it a smart investment. He didn't mention where the money came from. No one asked about me, my plans, my life. I was invisible, just like always. The noise got to me, my father's proud laughter, the clinking glasses, the chatter about Evan's achievements. I slipped out to the porch for air, my chest tight. That's when I saw Uncle Richard leaning against the railing, watching me with quiet eyes. Richard had always been different, kind, thoughtful, the one family member who seemed to actually see me. "Hey, Kevin," he said softly, his voice full of concern. "You okay?" My throat tightened, emotions bubbling up. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "No," I admitted, my voice breaking. "They took my college fund, Richard. Gave it to Evan for his house. And when I confronted them, they called me spoiled. Evan laughed in my face, said I didn't deserve it." Richard's face darkened as I spoke, his jaw tightening. He listened silently, letting me spill everything, my father's cold words, Evan's mockery, the betrayal that cut deeper than I could explain. When I finished, tears stung my eyes, but I didn't look away. "I'm so sorry, Kevin," Richard said, his voice thick with sincerity. "I've watched them treat you unfairly for years. I should have spoken up sooner." I shook my head, wiping my face. "It's not your fault." He sighed, staring out at the yard. "Family loyalty shouldn't come at the cost of your self-worth, Kevin. Remember that." His words hit hard, sinking deep. All my life, I'd chased my parents' approval, thinking loyalty meant taking their neglect, their favoritism, their betrayal. But Richard was right, I didn't owe them anything, not when they treated me like I didn't matter. For the first time I felt seen, understood. "You're right," I said, my voice steadier, stronger. "They made their choice. Now I'll make mine." Richard turned to me, a small smile on his face, pride in his eyes. "Whatever you do, Kevin, you're not alone." That meant everything. For years, I'd felt like I was fighting a losing battle, trying to earn a place in my own family. But Richard's support was a lifeline, a reminder I didn't have to do this alone. It gave me the courage I needed to keep going, to stop letting them walk all over me. I looked out at the yard, my mind racing. I'd been so focused on the hurt, the betrayal, that I hadn't thought about what came next. But now, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let them get away with this, not just the money, but the years of making me feel like I was less than Evan. I needed proof, a way to make them face what they'd done. "Thanks, Richard," I said, my voice firm. "I think I know what I need to do." He nodded, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You've got this, Kevin. You're stronger than they think." I took a deep breath, feeling a shift inside me. Richard's belief in me lit a fire I didn't know I had. My parents and Evan thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd take their betrayal and move on. But they didn't know me at all. I wasn't the kid they could ignore anymore. I was ready to fight for myself, for my future. And with Richard in my corner, I knew I could do it. The next few days, I threw myself into gathering evidence, determined to make my parents face what they'd done. Every step hurt, digging into the betrayal of the people who raised me, but it also made me stronger. I needed to know how far this went. So I set up a meeting with a lawyer downtown, a guy named Mr. Carter, who came recommended by a friend. I sat across from Mr. Carter in his small office, my hands twisting in my lap. He looked over the bank papers I'd brought, his face serious. "Kevin," he said, setting the papers down, "this isn't just about your parents taking the money. They committed bank fraud." My heart pounded. "Fraud?" He nodded, sliding a file toward me. "They forged your signature, faked investment documents to move the funds. That's a crime." The words hit hard, the truth sinking in. This wasn't just betrayal, it was illegal. My parents hadn't just taken my future, they'd broken the law to do it. I swallowed, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "What happens now?" "We can build a case," Mr. Carter said. "But if you move forward, there's no going back. They'll face real consequences." I nodded, resolute. They didn't leave me a choice. Leaving his office, the weight of my decision pressed on me. I needed to talk to someone, to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. I drove to a quiet cafe where Uncle Richard was waiting, his calm presence easing my nerves as soon as I sat down. I ordered a tea, my hands still shaking from the meeting. "Richard," I started, staring at the steam rising from my cup, "did you know about this? About them taking my money?" He sighed, his eyes heavy with regret. "I didn't know how far they'd gone, Kevin. I called them out once, years ago, about always favoring Evan. But they shut me out, wouldn't listen. I've regretted not pushing harder ever since." His words stung, but they also made me feel less alone. I wasn't crazy, this wasn't in my head. "The lawyer says it's fraud," I told him. "They forged my signature, faked documents. It's a crime." Richard's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. "That's worse than I thought." He reached across the table, putting a hand on mine. "You're brave, Kevin. You don't owe them your silence." His support steadied me, pushing away the doubt. I'd been second-guessing myself, wondering if I was overreacting, if I should just let it go. But Richard's words reminded me my pain was real, my anger justified. I had every right to fight back. "I'm planning a dinner," I said, my voice firm. "I'll invite them, my father, Evan, the whole family. They'll think I'm trying to make up, but I'm going to tell them about the fraud charges." Richard nodded, a small smile on his face. That's a good plan. They need to face what they've done. I sipped my tea, feeling a strange mix of fear and power. I'd spent so long trying to be the good son, the good brother, hoping they'd see me. But they never did. Now, I'd make them see me, not as the kid they could ignore, but as the one holding them accountable. I thought about my father's cold words, spoiled, grow up, and Evan's mocking laugh. They thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd let them walk all over me. But I wasn't that kid anymore. With Richard's support, I felt stronger than ever. I'd spent years in their shadow, but now I was stepping into the light. As I left the cafe, my plan solidified. The dinner would be my chance to show them I wasn't invisible. They'd taken my trust, my future, but they wouldn't take my fight. I was ready to make them face the consequences, no matter how hard it got. The evening of the dinner arrived, and tension coiled tight in my chest. I'd invited my father, Evan, and a few family friends to my place, pretending it was a chance to reconcile. They'd bought it. My father sounded pleased on the phone, probably thinking I'd come crawling back. Evan agreed too, his voice smug, like he'd already won. But they had no idea what was coming. The house felt strange as I set the table, every corner filled with memories now tainted by betrayal. Evan showed up first, lounging on the couch with a beer, talking loudly about his plans to renovate his new house, the one my money bought. My father arrived next, nodding at me like everything was fine, like he hadn't stolen my future. The other guests trickled in, filling the room with chatter. I played the part, smiling, serving drinks, but inside, I was ready to explode. Just as I was about to speak, I overheard my father in the next room, talking to a family friend. "Yeah, we helped Evan with Kevin's funds," he said, his voice proud. "Evan deserved it more, after all he's been through. Kevin will manage, he always does." His words reignited the fire in me, the betrayal cutting fresh. I took a deep breath and stepped into the dining room, everyone's eyes turning to me. "Actually," I said, my voice calm but firm, "there's something you all need to know." My father frowned, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Kevin, this isn't the time." I ignored him, standing tall. "I filed fraud charges against you," I said, looking straight at him. "Both of you?" A heavy silence fell, the room frozen. My father's face went pale, his mouth opening in shock. Evan's beer slipped from his hand, hitting the floor with a thud, his eyes wide with fear. The guests shifted uncomfortably, unsure what to say. "Fraud charges?" my father sputtered, his voice rising. "How could you do something so cruel, Kevin?" "Cruel?" I echoed, stepping closer, my voice steady. "You took my future and gave it away. You forged my signature, lied, and used my savings without even asking. That's cruel." Evan's composure broke, his voice shaking with panic. "You're destroying our family." "No," I said, turning to him, my gaze hard. "You did that. You all made your choices, taught me exactly how to prioritize family. You just didn't think I'd prioritize myself." The room erupted into chaos. My father shouted, slamming his fist on the table, accusing me of betrayal. Evan jumped up, yelling that I was ruining his life, his face red with anger and fear. The guests murmured, some slipping out the door, not wanting to be part of the mess. But I stood there, calm, grounded by the truth. Their words couldn't touch me anymore. I walked outside, leaving the shouting behind, the cool night air hitting my face. I breathed deep, feeling free for the first time in years. I'd spent so long trying to fit into their idea of family, taking their neglect, their favoritism, hoping they'd see my worth. But they never did. Now, I'd made them see me, not as the quiet kid they could ignore, but as the one holding them accountable. I leaned against the porch railing, my hands steady. My father's proud voice echoed in my mind, "Evan deserved it more," but it didn't hurt anymore. I'd taken back my power. They thought I'd stay silent, that I'd let them walk all over me. They were wrong. The truth was out, and there was no going back. I didn't feel guilt, didn't feel doubt. I felt strong, ready for whatever came next. The days after the dinner felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. The legal action moved fast, exposing my father's betrayal to the world. Headlines screamed about the fraud, each one a knife in our family's name. My father and Evan, once so proud, faced the consequences they never saw coming. Their finances crumbled. My father had to sell his car, his prized watch, anything to cover legal fees. Evan lost his house, the one my money bought, forced to sell it to pay his own debts. Evan called me one night, his voice ragged with panic. "Kevin, you're ruining my life," he screamed over the phone. "Everything's falling apart because of you." I stayed calm, my voice steady. "I didn't tear this family apart, Evan. You did. You all made your choices, and now you face them." His shouts turned to sobs, full of self-pity, but I didn't budge. I'd let guilt and loyalty trap me for too long. I wasn't going back. Still, in quiet moments, doubt crept in. Late at night, I'd lie awake, questioning myself. Was I too harsh? Was I wrong to destroy my family like this? The guilt gnawed at me, mixing with the anger, the hurt, the longing for the parents I thought I had. I needed clarity, so I went to Uncle Richard. We sat on his porch one evening, the air cool and quiet. I poured out my heart, my voice breaking. "They were my family, Richard. Part of me still loves them, even after everything. Is that wrong?" Richard's eyes softened, understanding in his gaze. "Love isn't wrong, Kevin. It's natural. But loyalty isn't owed where it's not returned. They chose Evan over you, again and again. They left you no choice. You deserved better." His words settled the storm inside me, easing the guilt. He was right. I'd given them years of chances, years of loyalty, and they'd thrown it away. I wasn't the one who broke this family, they were. Richard's support reminded me my worth wasn't tied to their approval. I'd done the right thing, even if it hurt. Evan kept calling, his messages swinging between anger and desperate pleas. "Kevin, I'm your brother. Help me," he'd beg, his voice cracking. I wanted to feel sorry for him, but then I'd remember his laugh, his cruel words, spoiled, whining, and how he'd taken what was mine without a second thought. "I can't, Evan," I'd say, my voice firm. "Not anymore." Richard's advice kept me grounded. "They brought this on themselves," he'd say when I wavered. "You deserve peace, Kevin, not their guilt trips." Slowly, I started to let go. I stopped answering Evan's calls, stopped letting his words pull me back into the past. I'd spent years feeling responsible for their happiness, but I was done. I watched from a distance as their lives fell apart. My father's friends stopped calling him, ashamed to be tied to his scandal. Evan's so-called friends disappeared too, leaving him alone with his mess. Part of me ached for the family we used to be, but a bigger part felt free. I'd broken the chains they'd wrapped around me, the ones that made me feel small, invisible. I sat on Richard's porch that night, staring at the stars. "I thought I'd feel worse," I admitted. "But I don't. I feel lighter." Richard smiled, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You did what you had to, Kevin. You're stronger for it." I nodded, a small smile on my face. The guilt was fading, replaced by a quiet certainty. I'd fought for myself, for my future, and I'd won. My father and Evan thought they could use me, but they'd underestimated me. Now, they were facing the consequences, and I was finally free to build a life on my own terms. Months later, I was thriving in ways I never thought possible. Free from my family's shadow, I felt like I could finally breathe. I bought a small house on the edge of town, a cozy place with a porch that caught the morning sun. Standing there, keys in my hand, I felt a deep pride. This wasn't just a house, it was a symbol of everything I'd overcome, every hard lesson, every ounce of strength I'd found. At work, I was killing it. My bosses noticed my focus, my ideas, and I got a promotion I'd been chasing for years. Colleagues started coming to me for advice, respecting me in a way my family never did. Each one reminded me my worth wasn't tied to their approval, it was mine to define. I'd spent so long trying to prove myself to them, but now I was proving it to myself, and that felt better than anything. I drove home one afternoon and saw a help wanted sign in a diner window. For a moment, I thought of Evan. I'd heard he was struggling, bouncing between low-paying jobs, his fancy life gone. I pictured him working at a place like that, the guy who'd mocked me for not knowing struggle, now facing his own. I thought about sending him a photo, rubbing it in, but I didn't. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need to. Our paths were separate now, and I wasn't responsible for him anymore. I drove past, a faint smile on my face, letting go of the last piece of bitterness. Evan still messaged me sometimes, desperate for money or forgiveness. "Kevin, I'm your brother," he'd text, his words dripping with self-pity. Each message tugged at old feelings, but I stayed firm. I'd learned forgiveness didn't mean letting him hurt me again. "I can't help you," I'd reply, and I meant it. I wasn't his safety net anymore. The space my family left behind started filling with something better. I made real friends, guys at work who became like brothers, neighbors who invited me over for drinks, and Richard, who stayed my rock through it all. They showed me what family could be: trust, respect, kindness, not blood. On a sunny morning, Richard and I sat on my porch, sipping coffee in comfortable silence. He turned to me, his eyes warm with pride. "Kevin, you've come so far. Watching you take back your life, it's incredible. I hope you see how strong you are." Tears stung my eyes, but they were happy ones. "I couldn't have done it without you, Richard. You were there when I needed someone most." He smiled, patting my hand. "I was here, but you did the work. You chose strength over bitterness, self-respect over guilt. You built a life worth celebrating." His words hit deep, sealing everything I'd learned. I'd spent years thinking family was about blood, about taking the hurt because that's what you do. But real family was the people who chose you, who lifted you up, not the ones who tore you down. Richard, my friends, they were my family now, built on love, not obligation. I stood, stretching in the sunlight, feeling a peace I hadn't known before. The past had shaped me, but it didn't define me anymore. My father, Evan, they were a chapter I'd closed, a lesson I'd learned. I didn't need their approval, their love, to know my worth. I had it in myself, in the life I'd built, in the people who stood by me. As I looked out at my quiet street, I felt ready for whatever came next. The betrayal had broken me once, but it also made me stronger. Now, I was free, free to live, to grow, to be me, without their weight holding me back. I'd earned this peace, this joy, and I was going to savor every second of it.